Hey guys, welcome to a very special episode of TFL Talk. That's because I've got my son Tommy with me today because Nathan is out actually test driving cars.
Yeah, that's right. So we're having a really fun conversation, a really fun discussion today because we both took separate cross-country Tesla road trips, and we're going to talk about the experience, talk about whether it was good, terrible, bad, ugly, all of it, and also talk about some news, answer some questions, and have a nice little fun podcast today.
Yeah, first of all, it was pretty terrible. So I drove from Marco Island back to Colorado, which was 2,000 miles. You drove from basically Disneyland to Disney World, which was 2,500 miles in a cannonball. And so we basically started in Colorado, drove to Southern California, drove to Florida, drove to Southern Florida, and drove back to Colorado. I think we put like 8,000 miles in a span of like 5 to 8 days on our Model 3 Performance. And we learned a lot, Tommy, and a lot of it was not, some of it was good, but a lot of it was not good, at least for me.
I think I had a pretty good experience overall, and I had the harder trip. So Andre and Cole and I, as you mentioned, went from California to Florida straight.
Hold up there, Gungadin. You had the harder trip.
Much harder.
I did it. You had 3 people doing a cannonball trying to break mine and Nathan's record, which is, by the way, 46 hours and 46 minutes from basically downtown Anaheim in California to downtown Orlando. But you had 3 people doing it. I drove for 3 days by myself.
Yeah, but you got nice stops overnight. You could take your time. There was no time crunch.
One of the hotels I stayed at, this Quality Inn, smelled like some dog had done its duty on the rug, and they put down a lot of perfume and disinfectant. I hate that. You know, when you walk into a room and you're just like engulfed in the smell of like perfume and disinfectant because you know something really bad happened.
Yeah, it's still not as bad as the second day when it's 4 a.m. and you have slept 3 hours in the last 40 hours.
I've done that.
I know, it's terrible. So that was, I think I had the harder one still. Even though there were 3 of us, I think we all got a total of about 4 hours of sleep and a lot of hours of driving. 2 days of driving.
Right, but you went 2,500, so divide that by 3 if you took turns, so you drove like 800 miles. I drove 2,000. Anyway.
Yeah, but you got to luxuriate.
I did not luxuriate.
You got to take your time at the rest stops. You got to have a nice pee. You know, you could get your snacks.
I did have a lot of peas.
You know, you could take your time, look at the scenery.
You could also have the same thing at the rest stops. You guys also had to stop. Anyway, before we get into all that, let's talk about the latest news in the electric world. And I think this has so many repercussions that we need to talk about. And that is now both Ford and General Motors have said that they're switching over to NCAS?
NACS.
I knew I'd get that wrong. NACS, which is the Tesla standard for electrification in terms of the plug, right? It's what you plug into your electric car. The other standard in America, there's 2 others, is CCS, and then, of course, what's the old one? CHAdeMO, which is dying. And other YouTubers out there have said CCS is dead. I completely disagree. I don't think it's dead. But, you know, most of the financial news has been good for Tesla because their stock has gone through the roof. But let's start by kind of looking at it from a number of different perspectives. And the first perspective I think we need to bring to bear is that I don't think legacy manufacturers understand that unlike a regular internal combustion engine car,
right?
Electric cars are 50% car and 50% charging network.
Yeah, which is why I think that we're seeing the adoption of the NACS, as some people call it, the NACS standard. Because for a lot of years, there were really 2 standards. You had the Tesla standard and you had the non-Tesla standard. And now that both Ford and GM, be it through adapters or through new ports on their upcoming models, are going toward the Tesla standard, the hope is, and as Ford went on, Jim Farley from Ford went on Twitter with Elon Musk, you're going to be able to charge Ford products on the best charging standard, which is the Tesla standard, the supercharger network. So it really opens up a lot of possibilities here. It also potentially could mean that now we're going to have 1 standardized plug instead of 3. So this whole, some cars have CHAdeMO, some have CCS, some have the Tesla standard. It's not working. To have 1 plug that works across every charger would be incredible.
So it's like, you weren't around for this, but it's like when there was 2 different DVR standards, right? Betamax and VHS. And Betamax was by far the better standard, which was Sony's standard, but VHS ended up winning out. So that would, the analogy there would be Tesla would be Betamax and VHS would be CCS. But in this case, Betamax is winning out.
Which is good, because it's the better standard. The plug is much more streamlined. So one of the issues with the CCS plug is it's a combined port. So the top portion is called J1772. That's for AC charging. And then there are these two ugly prongs underneath. And the handles are huge. They're really cumbersome. You have to finagle them to get into the port a lot of the time. Whereas the Tesla standard is both AC and DC in one slim, boop, graceful little handle, plug it in, works every time. And of course, the big difference that the competitive advantage that Tesla's had for a long time is a supercharger network, right? It's all within the Tesla ecosystem. There's no futzing with, apps and wireless or Apple Pay and credit cards. You just plug it in, the car will bill your account, and off you go, and it works every time. Whereas on the CCS network, you got EVgo and you've got EA, and you got to get the car to talk to the charger, and then there's communication issues, and then sometimes the credit card reader doesn't work, and you got to pay on an app, and the pricing is different depending on whether or not you have an account, and it's just a mess. So going forward, I'm hoping that you'd be able to take your Ford Lightning, drive up to a supercharger, plug it in, and have a seamless Tesla-like charging experience.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Tommy. Let's look at this from the driver's point of view. This is all good news. It means that they have a lot more charging opportunities because there's a lot more Tesla chargers. Last time I read, it was something like 19,000, and I'm not sure if that was worldwide. And those are individual chargers. Certainly, it'll make it easier because you're right. The Tesla plug is so much easier than I was wrestling with one coming back with one of the CCS ones at Electrify America at 12 o'clock at night, and I was like, if I were a woman, I don't know. If I were Jill Simonillo, who's one of our little tiny journalists, the thing is super awkward and super heavy. So yes, from that point of view, I think it's all good news. But let's look at it from another point of view, okay?
Okay.
And that is, actually, let's stay with the driver's point of view. So I know it's funny. So if you listen to all the Tesla fanboy and fangirl podcasts, all the electrical podcasts, this is like the coming of Christ, right? Because all of a sudden the skies part and the world is much better from an electric car standpoint, and every problem has been solved. And what I learned, Tommy, driving 2,000 miles across country in a Tesla is we are so far from having enough chargers that even though now GM and Ford cars will have access to the Tesla chargers, it's not enough. It is nowhere near enough. In parts of Kansas, there was 150 or more miles between Tesla chargers, Tommy. Imagine, just flip it around. Imagine if there was 150 or more miles between regular gas stations, how you'd be locked into having to stay on one journey because you wouldn't have the opportunity to go where you want, to drive where you want, because you got to go from charger to charger to charger. So that's number one. Number two, as much as some of the Tesla chargers are in better locations than the CCS. So let's start with like horrible, which is CCS, Electrify America, and Walmart parking lots, right? That's no fun. It's let's go to less horrible, which is Tesla chargers in like next to grocery stores or next to malls, but these things are nowhere near enough of places like gas stations where it just makes it convenient and makes it something you don't ever think about. So I don't think the skies have parted. I'll give you an example of that. I pulled into Hays, Kansas. I'm thinking of Hays, Alaska. I pulled into Hays, Kansas at midnight. And the Tesla charger, unlike all the lit up gas stations, and there's like 5 of them there, right off the highway, I feel it's behind either a hotel or a restaurant. And I pull in there, I'm completely by myself. There's a car parked there for some reason that's idling. And I'm like, what's this guy doing? And then there was a white pickup truck that started circling with 2 guys in it. And I thought to myself, if I were your mom, I'd be terrified, parked back here trying to sit here for the next half hour. So I was actually so kind of worried about it, especially about the pickup truck, that I decided, you know what, I'm going to go to the Walmart and charge there. and that charger was in the middle of the parking lot, in an empty Walmart parking lot. And the other problem that I had was that because the car had preconditioned itself to take on as much electricity as possible, I could have gone to the hotel, which, by the way, was a Hilton, which had no chargers. Good hotel, no chargers. I could have gone there, gone to bed, but then the next morning I would have had to go back to the Tesla charger, and it would have been much slower, so it would have gone from like a half hour to maybe 45 minutes while the car is preconditioning itself because the battery would have cooled off. So I would have spent another 15 minutes, which may not sound like a long time, but when you think about it in terms of internal combustion engine vehicles, it is a long time. Spent a lot more time charging. So I had to charge when I didn't want to. I had to charge at a place that I didn't want to because the Tesla charger was in a spooky location. And I started thinking about this from like an internal engine combustion point of view, and I thought to myself, and this is also true, if I had been in any one of our regular vehicles that we have, I would have been in Colorado already. I would have been home in my own bed because basically that 2,000-mile trip added something like between 4 and 6 hours to my trip, which was the amount of time it would have taken me to get back to Colorado from Hays, Kansas. And so all the money I saved charging, I spent on that nice Hilton without chargers because I couldn't go as quickly or as far on the electric charging network that is currently in place. So the lesson I took away from that is I just think we are so far, and I finally understand like why people don't want electric cars, because especially on a road trip, I'm not talking about driving it around town and the charger at home, but on a road trip, they are just one giant pain in the butt.
Sorry, that was quite the rant you just did. That was like quite 4 minutes of talking.
I know. Sorry about that.
I have a very different experience.
Okay, let's hear yours.
So first thing, there's about 17,000 superchargers in the U.S.
Yes, individual ones.
Individual.
Not stations.
And if you rewind to 10 years ago, there were 0. So Tesla's built 17,000 superchargers in 10 years, which is pretty remarkable. And that's a curve that they're pushing faster and faster and faster. Tesla has not taken the foot off the pedal. They're building more, and they're building more regularly.
Absolutely agree.
Second thing I noticed, I actually found the chargers to be very readily available. And I think on your route, apart from maybe 1 or 2 sections in Kansas, there's a lot of instances where you're actually skipping past superchargers.
Oh, God, yeah.
So I don't think it's fair to say there aren't enough chargers, because it used to be that you had to full charge your car just to make it to the next one that was 200 miles away. On I-10, through super rural parts of Texas, we were coming across a charger every 70 to 80 miles, maybe 80 to 100 miles.
How many gas stations do you think are in between those 80 miles?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably 3 times as many. But
3 times?
I mean, in rural Texas.
300 times.
Dad, in rural Texas, there's parts where you're going 50 miles without anything.
I know, but there are towns that have gas stations that you could drive to.
Sure, but I'm saying it's still very doable. In some cases, we were skipping 2 or 3 superchargers every time we drove. So it's not like you're constantly searching for them.
Fair. I'm not saying you're searching for them. All I'm saying is when you put it into context from an internal combustion engine point of view, it's lacking. And what ends up happening is you don't have control of your route, right? And I'm sure that's going to change. Like you said, they're building a lot more. So when you're driving the trip I did and you see an interesting, let's say, museum you want to go to, or you want to go visit some friends, right? You can't do that right now, because what will happen is you will not have enough power to make that optional excursion, because the way the superchargers work is they are basically far enough apart where you go from one to the other, and yes, sometimes you can skip them with maybe like 25% of power left in the car, maybe less than that, right?
Well,
what you end up doing is you end up being kind of tied to that computer program that's running in the Tesla, telling you this is how long you have to stay here to charge. And then this is the next supercharger you go to. And by the way, that program was not what Tesla advertises it to be. I'll give you 2 examples.
Well, hang on. We need to explain what the program is.
All right. Yeah, why don't you explain it?
The Tesla Route Planner. Yeah. And the idea is you plug in your destination into the computer, and then the navigation will tell you where to stop and for how long to stop. It's pretty cool. So it'll be like you're starting with 87% at the beginning of your journey. You're going to drive 150 miles, and you're going to stop for 15 minutes. Then you're going to drive 110 miles, you're going to stop for 10 minutes. You're going to drive 200 miles, you're going to stop for 30 minutes. So it looks at the route, and it comes up with a basic plan on how to get you from point A to point B. And it shows you to the exact percentage what you're going to arrive at the charger with. So sometimes it's like you're going to arrive with 15%, sometimes you're going to arrive with 10, sometimes you're going to arrive with 20. So it knows exactly what the route is and how long it should take you.
Yeah, which you think would be ideal, but if you're traveling like I was, 2,000 miles, and really your goal at this point isn't to have a merry trip across the country where you're enjoying different foods, but you just want to get back, right? Because at that point, that's all I wanted to do. Then you start to question it because, for instance, I'll give you an example. I'm driving along, and there are two superchargers right next to each other. Well, I say 2 miles apart. Mm-hmm. And there's two versions, right? There's the version 2 and the version 3. And the difference between the version 2 and version 3 is quite substantial. So the version 2 is a 150 kilowatt charger, and the version 3 is a 250 kilowatt charger. The other problem with the version 2 is that you have like charger 1A and charger 1B, and if two cars are parked there, you're having that 150, so now you're getting 75 kilowatts. Mm-hmm. So, if you don't want to spend a lot of time charging, you want to go to the faster version 3 superchargers. And Tesla, in its infinite wisdom, decided that even though the two were 2 miles apart, I'd be better off going to the slower 150 versus the quicker 250, which was just 2 miles down the road. I don't understand why it would do that.
Well, we actually even funny instances, like there was one stop we went to, middle of the night, nobody at any station. There was one that it took us to that was 150, and literally across the street was a 250 that was completely empty. And the other thing, too, that the Tesla planner does is these EVs, they charge much slower above 50% than they do below 50%. And often what we were finding is that the Tesla route planner would have us sitting there charging to like 75, 80, 85% to skip 2 or 3 superchargers on the way to get to one that was much further. The issue with that is if it had me charge instead of 35, 40 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, charge for less, drive for less, charge for less, drive for less, but then you're charging when the car can charge its fastest. So you're actually better off spending less time charging and spending less time driving, because then you are essentially charging at the higher charge peak that the car can do before you get into like the 70, 80 percentiles.
Yeah, I had that same experience. It would make me, you never want to charge above 80 because it can take you as long to go from 80% battery filled to 100% as it does from 0 to 80%.
Well, I would go further. On the Tesla, I wouldn't even want to charge above 60.
Yeah, it really
above
slows down.
60, it really slows down. So you're better off staying in that bottom 60% of the battery and then pulling in with 5, 6%, charging to 60, pulling into 5, 6%, charging to 60. And oftentimes the route planner wouldn't have you do that. It would have you do these huge stretches and these huge charges, which is pretty frustrating.
So this is exactly what I'm talking about. And the epiphany I had was, if you're used to pulling into a gas station and the only thing you worry about is, is the bathroom clean and how much does the gas cost, all this stuff that we're talking about is just a huge pain in the butt, right? It's like taking a giant step backward in terms of convenience and in terms of availability.
I don't agree with that.
Okay.
Because, you have to think about it. You have to think a lot less than you do with any other car. With an Ioniq 5, you really had to plan your routes because the car just had such a crappy route plan for you guys. But, for example, if you did want to go visit a friend, you just add your friend's address into the destination, and it'll figure out how much longer you need to charge at a stop to get there and get to the next one. So the car is pretty smart in that way. I also feel like you're being a little unfair to the location of the Tesla superchargers. So there were a couple that were like in a hotel parking lot, which is like, well, gosh, what do I do here? But we had some really good stops. I would say the vast majority of our stops were at truck stops or gas stations that I would have likely stopped in a gasoline car. We stopped at a bunch of Flying J's, which had really clean restrooms. They had showers. They had full food, all that. We stopped at a bunch of Buc-ee's, which are these huge Texas gas stations.
I stopped at a Buc-ee's too.
They have enormous amounts of food.
Yeah, it was so cool, Tommy. Buc-ee's was that's like America, distilled into a rest stop. The only thing I don't understand about a Buc-ee's is I bought some food, right? Uh-huh. The only place you can eat it at a Buc-ee's is in your car. There's no tables.
Yeah, but that's the same for gas cars too.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. Anyways, we're not going to talk about Buc-ee's and stuff.
But stopped at a Wawa, which was a great experience.
Right. Yeah, I did too, which was great.
Yep.
Let me tell you the other side of that coin. In downtown St. Louis, I really had to pee.
Yep.
I'm getting to that age where I pee a lot more, unfortunately. And it took me to this industrial park. And there were like 5 of us there. And we're like, we got to go to the bathroom. And so somebody said, oh, there's one of these indoor dog parks. There's like a giant warehouse. And they have a bathroom because there's no bathrooms, there's no gas stations. And at that point, Tommy, I was out of power. It wasn't like, like at a regular internal combustion engine car, you're like, okay, well, I've got another 50 miles I could drive, right? This thing is I was out of power. I was going to stop there or nothing. So pull in there, charging, and it was a 250. That was great. Go to the indoor dog park. And I'm like, hey, can I use your bathroom? And they're like, yes, but you have to fill out this liability form. And I'm like, what, is the dog going to bite me in the toilet while I'm And they're like, no, sorry. And then they even had a restaurant, but you couldn't use a restaurant without filling out a liability form. So that was really disappointing. So yeah, some of the Tesla, and then some of them are in I spend a lot of time in grocery stores, kind of like Walmarts,
Yep.
One of them was, this was in Abilene, Kansas, this little grocery store. First of all, 3 times I had a hard time finding them. So what happens is it takes you to the vicinity of the supercharger, the Tesla, navigation system, and then once you're within maybe a quarter mile, it just says you're there. And I'm driving 3 times as I'm driving around, and this thing was it looked like it was brand new. It was hidden behind a building on the side of the grocery store. And so once again, I had to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, hey, can I use your bathroom? And they're like, yeah, go through the brown doors. And basically, I went into the guts internal of the grocery store using an employee bathroom, which was weird and awkward. And I wouldn't have done it because, I just didn't want to be in the internal workings of a grocery store, but I had to pee. And then the other one was in Marietta, Georgia, where it took me to this little shopping center where there was a liquor store, an Indian restaurant, and then you're stuck in the position of having to go and ask permission at a restaurant that you're not eating at, whether you could use a bathroom, which is also awkward. And that one was also hard to find. So all this is, in comparison to a gas station, which is around every corner off of every exit.
Yeah, but you got to figure that in the early turn of the century,
But people, it was cars or the horse.
Right, but people were saying the same thing about the car. They're like, there's nowhere to fuel it up. I have to go. I mean, you told me it's an interesting story. You want to tell me what you told me about the Model T? When
there were no gas stations.
So when Ford was beginning to mass produce a Model T in serious numbers, something I didn't know is that
I agree.
towns didn't have gas stations at all. So where would you get the gas?
You had to go to a farmer.
Yeah, so you'd go to a general store. You'd go to your local little hardware store, and you'd go into the back and you'd ask them for some gasoline, and then they could pump it out of a barrel for you. And then I'm sure back in the day, people were like, that is such a pain in the butt. I'm going to ride my horse because I can fill up my horse with water anyway.
You're absolutely right. But the problem with that comparison is you're going from horses to cars. Here you're going from cars to cars.
Yeah, but I think it's such a huge mindset shift that it really isn't that crazy of a comparison.
The other problem I had, and this is you didn't have this because you had 3 people in your car. The Tesla navigation system does this really good job of telling you, you click on either a knife and a fork, so it tells you what restaurants are nearby. You click on a bathroom, but that's all well and good if you're not the one driving.
Yeah, it can be hard
because when you're driving, trying to figure all that out is very difficult and dangerous. The Tesla also does a thing where it shows you all the superchargers, and so you can select different superchargers you want to go to. Same problem, right? When you're driving, it's hard to do that because obviously you need to be paying attention. And if you guys are talking about full self-driving or advanced autopilot, all that is hands-on, eyes on the road. It doesn't allow you to turn it on and then start playing with the navigation system. You still have to keep your hands on the wheel and your eyes on the road, or the car yells at you.
Now, I don't want to make it sound like, I'm not trying to be a huge advocate for EVs here because it was a much longer trip. So I'm not going to tell you the full time.
Yeah, so Tommy tried to break mine and Nathan's record. Him and Andre set off, and we will be publishing that video. So we're not going to give it away whether he broke it, but we figured, like I said, with electric cars, half of it is a charging network. We figured he could break in a Tesla. So tell us how it went with the boys.
Okay, so I won't tell you the full time, but figure, because I want you to say tune the EV video, but it was just under 2 full days of driving. I'll put it to you that way. Yeah. So you were 46.
Yes.
So figure somewhere around that time. Not going to tell you the exact numbers, but let's talk about how long we ended up charging to drive 2,500 miles.
Yeah, tell me about that.
So because I kept track of all of our stops, so we stopped 19 times over 2,500 miles.
So let's compare. Let's just compare that to a car. Let's say a typical car can go 300 miles on a full tank, right? Which is right.
Yeah, but can the driver go 300 miles on a full tank?
No. But let's just talk about fueling, right? So to go 2,500 divide
Be about
250.
9
Let's
stops.
go 250. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe you would have had to stop maybe 8 more times
Yeah.
based on just
If you go 250, yeah. 8 or 9 more times.
right.
Exactly right.
But you may have stopped anyway to go to the bathroom or,
Right.
or whatever. Eat.
So our average charging stop was 21.1 minutes.
Wow.
So at first we were following the route planner and we were stopping for 30 minutes, 22 minutes, 33 minutes, 35 minutes, 35 minutes. And we were like, this is stupid. So what we ended up doing, kind of the secret sauce we found, is we would drive for an hour 45 to an hour 55, and then we would stop to charge for 15 to 20 minutes. Drive for an hour 45 to hour 55, stop for 15 to 20 minutes. And that seemed to be the fastest way across the country. Keep in mind, we were sticking to the speed limits. We're not breaking any laws here. It's all about the charging network and how you can optimize the car. So we stopped for a total of 402 minutes over the course of 2,500 miles. So
What's that in hours?
that is, go 402 divided by 60, 6.7 hours.
So if you were doing gas, you could have stopped. It's hard to say. It depends how long you would have stopped to eat, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's admittedly a long time. Figure in a gas car, if you were really trying to break the record on that trip, you probably could have, I don't know, what do you think?
You probably would.
10 charging stops, so 10 fueling stops. If you could keep them down to 7 minutes of fueling stop, you'd be 70 minutes of gas station time, so about an hour.
Yeah, so
So
about
we
4
were about-
hours less.
No, about 5 hours less.
5 hours less, yeah.
So that's a 5 hours. 5 hours more than the gasoline car. And it also cost us $277, which is pretty expensive. Maybe a little cheaper than a gasoline car, but not that much cheaper than a gasoline car. A couple other interesting things that we found.
Can I ask you this?
Yeah.
Did all of the Tesla chargers work?
Yeah, we didn't have
Every
we didn't have a single outage.
And did you ever have to wait?
No.
That's pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
I had the same, so that is a huge plus. I never had to wait. Once I did arrive, I think this was in Marietta, and there was only one stall left. But yeah, all of them worked every time seamlessly.
So another interesting thing we found, going through the rural parts of Texas,
Yeah.
right, there was probably a charger every 90 to 100 miles.
Okay.
So we might skip one charger. But we also found that in a lot of the instances, every town there was a supercharger, there was an Electrify America charger. And you're probably thinking, well, no need to go to the Electrify America charger because you're on the supercharging network. Well, through pretty much all of Texas, all of the Tesla chargers are rated at 150 kilowatts. But I started noticing that if you were to go across the street to the Walmart, you could go to an EA station that was rated at 350
Yeah,
kilowatts.
they got those, what are they called? Ultra fast, I think.
So 2 times we would have the car navigating the supercharger. It's warming up the battery. It's getting it ready to go. And at the last minute we go, nope, and we bang hard left and plug into the EA. And that was actually a great experience. And on the 150s, we were averaging probably 120 to 130 kilowatts. On the EA, though, we were pulling 170, 180, 190 because it's rated higher.
Yeah, so I think the Model 3 performance that we used is rated at 250 max. I saw 253 for about 22 seconds before it. I also was shocked at the charging curve. So this is another thing you don't have to worry about in an internal combustion engine car, right? How fast is the gas flowing to your car unless there's something wrong with either your car or the gas station, which happens but very rare. With electric cars, it's about the charging curve. In other words,
We talked about it.
How long can you sustain it? And the
Yeah.
Tesla one falls off a cliff pretty quickly. And then, like you said, once you get above 60% battery, it's just painfully slow.
You're just wasting time if you can make it to the next supercharger. Because basically, your trip is dictated by how fast you can charge, what your peak charge rate is, or your sustained charge rate, I should say. But I want to talk about EA for one more time.
Yeah,
because,
keep going.
One other thing we found interesting about the EA, so we stopped at 2 EA stations, one in Ozona, Texas, and one in Junction, Texas. Both were 15-minute charging stops. Now, throughout Texas, we were paying $13 to $15 for a 15-minute charging session, give or take. At the EA stations, we paid $4.72 and $4.97 for that same 15 minutes. So the EA charge cost was easily half, in some cases a third, as much as what Tesla was charging. So they were really affordable. And to EA's credit, I do have to say, both the chargers activated first try, both pulled peak charge rates immediately. The little adapter worked great, no problems. That was pretty interesting.
Yeah. I also like the fact that EA stations have screens.
Yep, so you know what's going on.
So you know what's going on. That's another thing. I think Tesla has taken the let's call it Silicon Valley, is it Valley, Silicon Valley? So yeah, route of having everything done through your phone. And what if your phone dies, dude?
Well, you wouldn't matter because you could just plug the car and it would still charge.
But you wouldn't have access to any of that information.
The car tells you.
Right.
Yeah, you would still know it because the car tells you all the
Then you'd have to
information.
use a credit card to actually control the car.
No.
If your phone's dead.
No, it doesn't matter because the car is linked.
No, I'm saying, but you'd have to drive with a credit card.
Oh, yeah, you have to drive with a Tesla.
If you don't have the credit card. Anyway, I found that having a screen on the EA was much more satisfying and much more interesting because I could actually see what the station was telling me versus what the car was telling me. Yeah.
Okay, I got some other things here.
Go for it.
So a couple other comments I have to make on our trip.
Yep.
Tesla has gone away from using radar cruise control, and it's all camera based.
I had phantom braking so many times.
Absolutely garbage. It's
absolutely
horrible.
Garbage.
So they say it's just as good and it saves them money, but what ends up resulting is you'll be cruising along at 80 miles an hour, and then the car will randomly slow down to 65, and then 55, and then 50, and there's no reason for it, and it's because the camera sees like a hill, or it sees we saw a lot of change in the color of the pavement, like if it went from
I saw that too.
a black to like a light, the car would often just slam on its brakes.
So once again, Kansas. I'm driving through Kansas, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are these like optical illusions that happen on the road ahead. Usually it happens when you go over a hill. And actually it happened like 4 times in a row going over these little overpasses where the white pavement, because of the way the shadow was, would look dark, right?
Yep.
And the Tesla would slow down. So I actually started recording that on the video camera. But of course, the way life works, you never get to do it after I did it 4 times in a row. But the most terrifying one, and luckily I was in a part where there was nothing, the car went into not just phantom braking, but phantom emergency braking.
Oh, geez.
It hit the brakes full on. And I drive, okay, I'm going to admit this, I drive like 5 miles above the speed limit, especially in places where there's no one around.
Mm-hmm.
And I went from like 80 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour like that. And if there had been a car behind me, I would have been rammed from behind. And
Yeah.
you're right. And the other thing that happens is I went through a really hard rainstorm.
Mm-hmm.
The little camera stopped working.
Yeah, there's just a lot of problems, and like the lane centering is sometimes good, and it's sometimes just very intrusive, and it sometimes just gets it completely wrong. Like it's not super well integrated. For a company that really established lane centering and really revolutionized this whole idea of level 2 autonomy, they've really come fallen compared to where they used to be, and even now that, like, for example, I kept thinking how wonderful that trip would have been with GM Super Cruise.
Yeah.
And Super Cruise only works on pre-mapped highways, right?
Right.
But it is such a confidence-inspiring system, and it's full hands-off. Eyes on, of course, but hands-off. And that trip would have been so much more relaxing with Super Cruise compared to the Tesla Autopilot system.
So I'll talk about the good and bad. I found autopilot to be good when I was tired. Especially because I think it took me 3 days to do that trip, and by the second day I was driving maybe 15 hours all day. That's a long. And by the end of it, I was pretty tired, and I think autopilot in those situations really helped. What I didn't like was we didn't pay for enhanced. We actually paid for full self-driving when we first got the car, and we found it to be pretty useless.
Well, we bought the subscription, not the $15,000 package.
Right, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But we found it to be pretty. So after a month, we just gave up on it. And in that case, when you signal, it actually changes lanes for you. With autopilot, every time you signal, it turns off autopilot. You got to engage it. But I found out with autopilot and adaptive cruise control, let's say I was following a truck, right, and I signaled to pass the truck, it would slow down the car, even though the truck was maybe 200 feet ahead of me. So that was also very intrusive. Like I couldn't, and maybe there's a way to do it in the software, but I couldn't find it. I couldn't find, in most cars you can say I want auto adaptive cruise control to be close to the car in front of me, like medium distance or far. With the Tesla, I couldn't change that. I couldn't, and every time I tried to change, it would automatically slow down, which is weird because when you're trying to pass somebody, the last thing you want to do is slow down.
Yeah. No, I know. It just would do weird stuff. Yeah. Overall, the car was pretty comfortable. The app is super great because you can precondition the cabin. When we were through parts of Louisiana and Alabama and Mississippi, it was really hot when we were charging. The car would heat up, and then we were in the gas station bathroom. You'd push the button, it'd bring the cabin temperature down really quickly. That was a really nice feature.
Yeah, like most cars, this is really car-specific stuff, but I found most cars have a really hard time. When it's really cold, it works well, the automatic climate control. And when it's really warm, it works well. It's when you're like in that 70 zone where it doesn't know, let's say it's 76 outside, right? And you have it set for 70. It doesn't really know how to get that temperature right because there's all this solar radiation coming in. So one of two things happens. You either get way too hot or you get way too cold. And the Tesla suffers from that problem as well.
Yeah. And then, I think that this record is certainly beatable. I'll put it to you that way. And we'd love to see someone try it and document it, and we'll run your video on our channel. And we'll include kind of the directions in the description below. But basically, you start at a fountain in downtown Orange, California. You go to a fountain in downtown Orlando, Florida. Really easy to find. You have to stick to the speed limit. And Andre and I did a generally pretty good job, I think. I think we used the Tesla network to its fullest. There was like one time, and this is the other thing too, is the route planner is really good 99% of the time, but every now and then it'll just completely freak out. We were going through San Antonio. We were at a charger. It said we'd make it to Houston with 15%. We unplug, we start driving, and then all of a sudden the computer recalculated and said, nope, you're going to make it there with 0%, and you have to slow down. So we were like, gosh, dang it. So we had to slow down to like 70. We kind of bungled that one up. We hit horrible road closure in New Mexico, Arizona. That basically meant we were stuck for 2.5 hours. 2 hours. A truck full of lettuce. A truck full of steel crashed into a truck full of lettuce. And there was lettuce and steel all over the road. So they had to close the highway, and there was no way off the highway. So that basically knocked 2 hours out of the time. So that was a real bummer. And there were ways that we definitely could have dropped some time overall. But it was a heck of a trip. I know I don't like driving overnight now for 2 nights in a row. My body does not do well with that because I just can't sleep in cars. And
Sleep?
I can't sleep in cars.
Really?
I can't. Yeah, I can sleep on planes. I can sleep in beds, obviously, and couches. But for some reason, the upright position of a car, just can't do it. Another thing I want to talk about too, and let's kind of bring this full circle to the Tesla allowing General Motors and Ford now, right?
Before we get to that, let me just say, if you guys want to see my road trip or Tommy's record-breaking attempt, we're editing those right now. Those are going to be on all TFL in the next week or two.
Yep.
Probably this weekend. If you're listening to this, we're time traveling, so it'd be the previous weekend. We're going to do my road trip, so if you want to see my road trip, it'll be up. And then coming up next weekend, we'll do the record-breaking attempt to see if Tommy and Andre broke mine and Nathan's record. You were going to bring it around full circle, Tommy.
Yeah, because, Tesla opening up their plug standard is not new. Elon said that he was going to do that years ago.
Yeah.
But there was one manufacturer, Aptera, right, that said they were going to launch their car with it, and then they never ended up launching the car, and they're still, it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
But, it was really not possible back then. And I think there were discussions I've heard between the manufacturers and Tesla back then, but it never came to anything. Now, of course, both Ford and GM have committed. And as you talked about, everyone thinks it's a great thing. Hooray, we have a new standard. It's all going to be Tesla stuff. I am a little skeptical for a couple of reasons. Reason number 1A.
Well, I'll give you 0A before you get to 1A?
No, I haven't even said 1A.
All right, go for 1A.
1A, the supercharger network is Tesla's main competitive advantage.
Yeah, sure.
So how is the payment going to work? Are Ford drivers just going to be charged at the wazoo to use it? Are GM drivers just going to be paying hundreds of dollars per charging session? That's my first skeptical thing.
Okay. I think it'll be the same for everybody.
What's your 2B?
My 2B is how are Tesla drivers going to feel when you are parked there with your Bolt soaking up a maximum of 50 kilowatts, which is going to take you probably an hour to fill that thing up if you're cross country. How are all the Tesla drivers going to feel just sitting there cooling their heels behind the restaurant at midnight?
Yeah, good point. I agree. That's interesting. And of course, Tesla's building the network. And we're also seeing now the manufacturers of the chargers, ABB and all these other companies, adding the handle to their other chargers, right? Which is interesting. That's another conversation we'll talk about in a second. But my 3C.
Okay, what's your 3C?
This is the most important thing. My grandma says this because she's a very big pessimist, and she always says, hear me now, believe me later.
Yes.
But if I had to hear my now, believe me later thing, I do not trust Elon within an inch of anything. And I think there's a good chance that we may end up with a Toyota situation, which is a story that not a lot of people know, but I think is a story worth reminding folks at this time and age.
What, you don't trust a self-aggrandizing narcissist?
Exactly. So here's what happened with Toyota. This is a really interesting story that not a lot of people know about. So about 10, 15 years ago, Toyota launched a compliance car, fully electric version of their RAV4.
Yeah.
It was called the RAV4 EV, and the powertrain for that vehicle was developed by Tesla.
Story is Akito Toyoda, CEO of Toyota at the time,
Met with Elon.
met with at some party.
Yeah, at some party, and they were chatting it up. They had a great repertoire. They came up with this great deal, and then it ended up becoming a reality. Tesla was going to do the drive units on the RAV4 EV. Take care of the powertrain, right? It's going to be a big happy thing. Toyota's going to sell them, and it's going to be this great symbiotic relationship. Tesla said it's going to be this price to do per unit. Toyota said, great, we're going to do that. When
Tesla batteries, Tesla power, Tesla drive units.
When Tesla delivered the final product,
Yeah.
Toyota has a really strict regiment toward reliability standards.
Of course,
they have this scale that they rank all their cars on, and I think it's out of like 900 or 1,000 points.
Yep.
And the car has to achieve a score of like 950 out of 1,000 points. The RAV4 EV, when they ran it through its testing, was at like 310. It was so far below the Toyota standards. So Elon did not deliver on a reliable product. And then B, and this is the big deal, when it actually came into fruition, Tesla ended up charging Toyota so much money, so far beyond what they said it would be per unit, that they just absolutely lost tremendous amounts of money on all their cars. And then when they came to market, a lot of people started having issues with them. And I know that a lot of the Japanese people at that company felt very ashamed by the product and were very embarrassed about the whole situation. And of course, in Japanese culture, it's one of the worst things you could do to someone is make them feel shame or embarrassment. And Toyota got really screwed over by the deal, is basically what ended up happening.
Yeah.
And that is, in my opinion, and after talking to some colleagues in the industry, that is probably one of, if not the driving reasons that Toyota is so far behind on electrification, is because after that process, Toyota said, we're not going electric. This is not ready. We got so screwed on this deal. And now, of course, we're starting to trickle out some electric products like the BZ4X. But
Yeah, I'll tell you.
essentially, Elon screwed Mr. Toyota royally. And just like that.
I'll tell you my Elon story. You know, in journalism school, they tell you to be skeptical, right? Hopefully not cynical. You know, I've always been skeptical. That's kind of been my nature. And it's proved me right many a time. So when he came to Boulder 10 years ago and opened up the Boulder store, this is when they were just selling the Roadster, right? I sat there and I watched his presentation, and he talked about how he's doing this for the earth and how, you know, ideally this could be a zero carbon fix because you charge your cars at home with solar panels and then you never use any carbon whatsoever, and it's all neutral, yada, yada, yada. Fast forward to like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and he became the crypto king. And I can't think of anything worse for the environment than crypto because it uses more energy than the entire country of Norway for this bullshit, like kind of, you know, crypto mining. So I don't know how in one breath you can be, you know, carbon neutral, and the other breath you can be investing billions in crypto unless you're, you know, just out for the money.
Yeah. No,
And
I agree.
And then he, you know, and I respect the fact a lot that he started an American car company, which is great. Most people somehow seem to forget that Tesla is American, but they are, which is wonderful. You know, he all of a sudden then decided to start production in other countries, which is fine. But then I feel very uncomfortable with like the fact that he was the only, or Tesla's the only car company that in China was allowed to have and build cars without doing a joint venture.
Right.
So that makes you wonder what behind the scenes or under the table deals happen there. So in my mind, you know, he's just, whatever he says, whatever he does is for his own benefit or for his bottom line or for his, in a way, his narcissism. So I don't necessarily feel like the stuff he's doing is for the good. You know, this opening up the superchargers. I think he knows what it does to his bottom line, and stock market has proved him right. You know, Tesla is back through the roof again in terms of stock prices, and I think that both General Motors and Ford have made a huge mistake by partnering with Tesla. Because think about it this way, Tommy. Imagine if every Shell station you went to had the word Chevy on it, the Chevy station, right? If electric vehicles are 50% the charging network, you just basically gave up your competitive advantage to another company, which means you're going to be relegated to second-class citizen within the next 10 years. If I were Stellantis, which is now the latest news is that they're considering using Tesla's network, or if I were one of the other German manufacturers, the first thing I would do is I would either buy an existing charging network and rebrand it as my own, or I would build out my own. Like I said, we are so far from having enough supercharging. I'm using Tesla's word, but let's call it DC fast charging, that you could partner with one of the current gas station companies that have hundreds of thousands of gas stations around the world, right?
Right.
Or you could partner or buy perhaps one of the other charging networks and brand it as your own. And I think if an OEM did that, they would be assured of having a successful future. The second you jump in bed with Tesla, I think you're going to get eaten.
Well, I love the idea. You know, if Elon sticks to his word and if it opens up affordable charging that's more reliable to the masses, I am all for it. I love the charger plug. It's way better than CCS or CHAdeMO. I love the form factor. I love the supercharging network. And I don't think that the brand deal is as big of a thing as you make it seem it is. Like, if I was in a Ford pulling up to a Tesla charger, I wouldn't think twice about it. I just don't think most people care.
Wouldn't you think to yourself, why am I driving a Ford if I'm charging a Tesla?
No, I wouldn't think that.
Really?
No, because I've got too much other crap going on in my life. The last thing I'm worried about
for 20 minutes with nothing to do.
The last thing I'm worried about is thinking about
staring into a Tesla charger.
No, I think it's. I don't think it's
pretty good branding, dude.
I don't think it's a detriment to the other manufacturers though. Looking into a Tesla charger.
Okay.
I just think that's not really relevant. But
time will tell.
I do hope that this standard works. I think it's a good standard. I'm not talking
about the standard. I agree. The standard works.
In Europe, they all use the same CCS2, right? They use
but that's different from our CCS1.
I know, but what's nice about that is every vehicle sold in the EU has to use the same plug.
Right.
And I don't know why we should have done this 10 years ago here in the States. The fact that we have 3 different charging standards is ridiculous. It's a mess. It would have been nice if someone had stepped in 10 years ago and be like, we got to use this one. This is going to be what we're using.
Is like, the Japanese standard, right? Because that's what works for them in Japan, and they brought it over here. And they're still kind of trying to force it here with Mitsubishi. I don't get why the Mitsubishi has
the Leaf still has it, but the Aria no longer has it. So, yeah, CHAdeMO I think is dead. There's just
dead. And I feel sorry for people who have CHAdeMOs because you're going to have fewer and fewer options.
I don't love CCS. I mean, I think it's kind of big and clunky and ugly, but it works pretty well. You can get pretty high speeds out of it. But the Tesla plug, the form factor, is definitely the best.
Yeah, I'm not arguing about the form factor. I'm just arguing about the fact that you've just basically, I think, written yourself off as a second-class car builder the second you've decided to, at least if electric cars are the future, which we think they are, then if you're not using if you don't have your own branded charging network, and it's not too late by any stretch of the imagination, then I think you're over the next 10 to 20 years, you're relegated into second-class citizenship. Now let's talk about something else in Europe, okay? Apparently, and I haven't seen these, but in Europe they have these really beautiful like charging, let's call them stations, right? Mm-hmm. Where you drive in and there's somebody there to help you if you don't know, and this is a big thing, if you don't know how to charge. And then they have like a kids play area, they have a workspace station, they have a coffee shop. On my entire trip, I only found one Tesla charger that approximated that. There was
at the Buc-ee's.
No, it wasn't nowhere near the Buc-ee's. It was where was it at? It was my last stop in Kansas, which would have been, I forget now. I forget the name of the town. But I pull in. The Tesla's chargers are once again in the back. Mm-hmm. But they had a Starbucks. They had a Qdoba in this one rest stop. They had a little kids park. They had a dog park, and they had very clean bathrooms.
Wow.
The rest of it, like I said, the worst one was at the downtown St. Louis industrial district where I couldn't even find a place to pee. So I think there's a huge business opportunity for somebody, specifically the gas stations, to actually create these things and actually build them out. A premium charging experience, because right now none of this is close to anything resembling premium. It's all pretty much, like you're on your own. Good
Well,
luck.
You forgot this picture here. You actually have the little washer thing for the windshield. That's better than most.
Wow, yeah, there's a washer thing. Hey, have you noticed what's not there, Tommy?
What?
There's no roof.
Yeah.
If it's
that's true.
raining.
You'd be out in the rain. Some of the new huge Tesla installs have roofs. I've seen.
Okay.
Same like with
Wow,
the new EA.
how innovative. They put a roof over a charger so that people don't get soaked when it's raining.
Yeah, but you don't spend a lot of time plugging in. You just go bloop,
You know, I was in this torrential downpour.
bloop.
Do you know how many gas stations don't have roofs?
None. I don't think there's any of them.
Yeah, I mean, come on. We're far.
Yeah, but
far,
on a gas
far from
station you have to
premium.
stand out there and wait. On this one you go bloop.
In a gas station, I'm like there.
Yeah.
You push the thing in the car. You start the gas and you go inside to use the bathroom. Here you got to go and ask the
No.
local restaurant if you can use their bathroom.
That no one is putting the gas in and then running in to go use the restroom.
Oh, everybody does that.
No, that's first of all, it's not allowed.
What do you mean it's not allowed?
Because what happens if the gas thing doesn't stop and starts spewing
That's why
gas
I have
all
those
over?
little click-offs.
It doesn't work some of the time.
Oh, come on.
I was in,
I don't want to bicker, but...
No, it's true, Dad. You can't. Please, people, don't leave your car when it's filling up. Dad, I've never seen you do that, and you really shouldn't do that. That's terrible advice. I was in
I'm not saying to do that. I'm saying that's what everybody does.
No, I was in South Dakota. It was a whole thing. Last year I was in South Dakota with
Yeah.
Kira, and there was somebody filling up a car,
Mm-hmm.
and they went in to use the bathroom, and it didn't click, and they ended up spilling 5 gallons of gas on the pavement, and they had to call the fire department. So it's a terrible thing. And honestly, that I've never seen anyone
You know
leave
what's
the
even
car.
the worst thing, and don't ask me how I know this.
What?
When you drive off with the nozzle still inserted in the vehicle.
Exactly.
You know what happens?
Yeah, I know. It breaks away.
There's a breakaway. Don't ask me how I know.
What you should
That's
do.
another story.
What you should do is just stand there where your car is filling up and then put it back.
Nobody does that. Everybody goes
That
to the
honestly,
bathroom.
I've never seen anyone leave to go to the bathroom
Okay,
while their
all right.
car is filling up
All
with
right,
gas.
all right, guys, in the comments below, let us know if you've seen people on a road trip, insert the nozzle, hit the little gas thing,
That's-
click. Some states don't allow you to do that, but the places do, click it into place so it's, and then go to the bathroom
That's
or
so
go
irresponsible.
get a drink.
No, I've never seen that.
Wait, what is irresponsible?
It is irresponsible. I just explained why.
Are there
If
any
it-
signs there saying, hey, don't, stand
Yes,
by
I think you legally have to be with your car while it's filming.
What is this?
Dad, you can't leave the car while it's filming.
Where are you getting this? The gasoline police?
No, I'm serious.
Google it, please. I'd love you to Google this.
Let's see.
I've only spent 50 years of my life maybe doing this wrong, so I'd love to learn.
No, you're never supposed to do it.
Well, this is you saying it,
No, that's what JD Power says.
not JD Powers. Give me like an enforceable statute that says that.
In many states, it is illegal to walk away from your car while filling up. This is according to Quora.
What's Quora?
It's like a question and answer site.
That's the source I trust.
Dad, I'm serious. It's really not a good thing to leave your car while it's filling up.
I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying everybody does. There's a lot of things that aren't good that people do. That's just the way life is.
Yeah, but it's a really terrible idea.
So I guess if you're believe in Tommy's statement, which I believe, but I'm just saying people do, then that's another one for Tesla because you can certainly walk away while it's charging. You can leave that thing sitting there for as long as you want. Are there idle charges? Does Tesla do idle charges?
I do believe they do, but if you're charging up to 100%,
So that's another thing we got to discuss about charging, right?
this is here we go. This person interviewed a trooper. Here we go. This is really interesting.
What does the trooper say? Let's hear it.
Um,
Then we'll talk about idle fees because we had a pretty bad experience with that as well.
Nowhere in the law does it say you're not allowed to pump gas specifically, but the law does indicate that you are not allowed to leave your vehicle running and unoccupied. So the
Running?
two coming together pretty much says once you get out of your car, it should be off.
Well,
so
I agree.
you can't leave your car pumping while it's
Running.
not running.
I would never let my car. I always that worries me when your car is running and you're pumping gas. That seems like a very dangerous situation because a spark could come out of the back of your tailpipe, and if there's gas fumes, yeah, no. Do not I agree. Do not leave your car running while you're pumping. But while the car is not running and you're pumping, I think it's fine to walk away. Anyway, I think we've
You're
beat
gonna
this.
get so many comments.
I think
Dan.
we've beat this dead horse. That's fine. We'll get comments.
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about idle fees.
Well, we
Idle-
only have a couple minutes.
I know, but we had a really interesting experience with that. So we drove we went to visit your grandma, my mom, on Marco Island, and kindly they actually in her complex had installed a charger. What was it called? The name of the network?
I don't remember. It was like Hudo or something. Vudo.
Gulo.
No, it's some silly name.
You have that.
I don't have it anymore.
You got rid of the app?
It, yeah.
Okay.
I think I deleted it.
Take a look. Anyway, I want to get this right just for
No, I don't have
fact's
it.
sakes. It was like GOO.
No, it was like Hudo.
Anyway, never heard of it. Charging network, and I'm like, whoa!
Can I clarify?
Yeah.
It was a level 2 charger that the building had installed.
You don't know who installed it.
Well, the building installed it. They didn't install it.
How do you know?
Because Bubby told me they had a big vote on whether or not they should pay to install these chargers.
All right.
So they installed them at this apartment complex.
Yeah.
And then typically with those, like with a charge point, the complex sets the idle fees.
Right.
So it was like 25 cents a kilowatt hour to charge there.
Yep.
25 cents to activate, but then 42 cents per kilowatt hour of idle fees.
No, 42 cents per minute of idle fees.
42 cents per minute. Sorry.
42 freaking cents per minute. So what that means is, not in a supercharging or DC fast charging situation where you're on the road, but in a place where you would normally plug your car and let it hopefully charge overnight, right? They were going to charge you, do some math for me, 42 cents a minute to sit there after the vehicle is done charging. So let's say you were flying in or you went somewhere and you let it sit there by accident for, I don't know, let's say 5 hours. So 5 times 60 times 42.
Be $126.
It would cost you $126 if you left it by accident or by forgetfulness or because you had an emergency for 5 hours after the car was done charging. Now, if anything's going to kill charging, it's that, Tommy. That is just, crazy. Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
That is the smartest thing that building could do.
Okay, why?
Because there's, I think, 500 residents in that building.
And they're all over 80 and none of them own electric cars.
They're all over, but eventually they will. And I know how old people are. They're just going to park. They're going to be very inconsiderate, and they're going to leave the thing plugged in until it gets to 100%, and it's going to be there. There needs to be an incentive to move your darn car.
That's not an incentive.
That is the best incentive you can, is money.
But that is not an incentive. That is highway robbery.
I think it's a good idea, because if you don't, people are just going to park their car there, and then you're going to pull up to charge. You're going to be dead. Right? You can't charge there because someone has parked their car for 6 hours at full, and you can't park there. And you're going to be pretty darn pissed off.
Once again, is this an issue that you have to deal with in an internal combustion? Is this better than the current system? Good God, no. Now it's somebody basically using, I would say, predatory capitalism to take advantage of old people. Because if anybody's going to forget to move the car, it's old people. You're living in a world of millennials. I'm living in a world of 80-year-olds who barely have the memory to turn off the oven, let alone, leave their car, forget about the fact that their car is charging and it's going to cost them 41 or 42 cents a minute after the thing is done charging. That is just competitive capitalism at its worst. And once again, not better than internal combustion.
Okay, well, let us know what you think in the comment section below. I think that we have had a very spirited conversation here. We would love to hear input.
Yeah.
And as always,
you think I was too down? Because people say I'm just too grumpy.
Yes, you are very grumpy.
Or is it just maybe it's just because I spent
3
days driving across country and I had to do it on somebody else's agenda, which was not my own. And for the first time, I thought to myself, what was the hardest moment? I'm in Hayes, Kansas, right? And I'm sitting there at midnight charging at a Walmart, right? Thinking to myself, if I were in a regular internal combustion engine car, number one, I'd be home by now, which is true. Number two, I could fill up in the morning. Okay. And number three, what is this white truck driving around me for?
Yeah.
Right? That was just so unpleasant and so frustrating that I thought to myself, we need to get much better at this than in order for people to actually willingly adapt electric cars. And given this is a road trip situation, so I think if you're, once again, have a house and have a level 2 charger, none of this becomes an issue. Driving around town to and from work, it's all good. But on a road trip, oh God help me.
All right, guys. Well, let us know what you think in the comments below. This has been Tommy.
Yeah, this has been Roman. Check out alltfl.com if you want to check out the video and see just how much, what a barrel of monkeys I had driving across the country.
All right, see ya.
Ciao.